Hello, my name is Hannah Kormis, and welcome to the Cyber Operations and Risk Management Briefing. Today we will be evaluating our current operation standards as well as our risk management standards. Let's get started. Due to the ever-growing dependence on technology, people and organizations alike are using software more and more every day to carry out daily processes and routines. Because of this reliance on software, they are often targeted for cyber attacks. This is where software assurance comes in. Software assurance is an important part of software engineering that provides the confidence that the software will run effectively without vulnerabilities and is trustworthy. Therefore, when developing software, we must ensure that it can withstand attacks as well as be able to adapt to the changing methods of attack by threat actors. To guarantee that Australia's software assurance program meets today's needs, there are 7 principles that should be addressed to increase software assurance. They are risk, interactions, trusted dependencies, attacker, coordination and education, and ability to be measured. Risk is often perceived incorrectly in that it is typically based on successful attacks and not a lot of forethought goes into planning ahead. It's important to understand that not all attacks are the same and vary in the impact it has on its victims. Interactions imply that since there are so many levels where interactions occur, protections for every level must exist, and each of those levels and roles must recognize and respond to each risk consistently. Trusted dependencies refers to parties we depend on, like in the supply chain. There is always risk when adding another party to the software development process, so organizations must evaluate how much trust they put in dependencies and continuously review those relationships when changes have occurred or if it warrants reconsideration. Attackers are evolving just as fast as technology is, and they are constantly coming up with new ways to infiltrate systems. So it's always important to consider how they will evolve when we come up with new defensive strategies or introduce new software. Coordinating an education refers to the need or effective collaboration throughout the organization and understanding the process of software assurance. Since applications, interconnections, operational usage, and threats are constantly changing, it's essential to be dynamic and have an adaptive response rather than a reactive response to software security. Finally, all results need to be able to be measured and audited to know if it's successful. Now let's discuss the key attributes of the software development cycle. The SDLC helps developers and their stakeholders to collaborate cohesively in order to produce a product that will follow all standards and policies set forth by the organization, as well as providing software that is usable and secure for the customer. There are 5 main phases of the SDLC. The cycle begins with requirement analysis phase, which involves the stakeholders determining what the software requirements will be to achieve the goal. Then during the design phase, the developers and technical architects begin to design the software and its system to develop the requirement. The implementation phase comes next, where developers begin to code the software, followed by testing, which is the last phase of the cycle before the software is delivered to the end user. Here, experienced testers try to find vulnerabilities and other defects, as well as ensuring that the software does what it is intended to do. Finally, the deployment and maintenance phase is releasing the software to the end users. There are several models in which the SDLC can use to deliver the software project. Of the models discussed during the software development lifecycle assessment, the 2 most popular models are the waterfall and the agile. Currently, the organization is using the waterfall, which has been somewhat problematic because only one phase can occur at once, and the option of going back to another phase does not exist. This means that any issues found during one of the other phases cannot be corrected until the maintenance phase in the end. While we have attempted to correct any vulnerabilities we have encountered, one of the biggest existing software vulnerabilities for Australia is that our software assurance is more reactive than proactive. Much of the security efforts put in place have been a result of breaches occurred. Take the current Reviton ransom attack on the nation's web server. Although we have the intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system in place, along with 2-factor authentication, much of it was put in place and audited post-attack. The lack of vigilance by the user is also a tremendous vulnerability, as proven by the spread of the malware. Other risks include those in Australia's supply chain. Because we rely on the software supply chain more than necessary, it provides a window of opportunity for attackers to gain access to our systems through not only Australia's vulnerabilities, but those within the supply chain. Some of the biggest risks and challenges that come with supply chains are the risk of hardware delivered with pre-existing malware, physical thefts of equipment during delivery, lack of data integrity, and much more. It was made apparent that we needed a backup of the data that is necessary for critical systems to continue and maintain operations. The backup data must be located in a secure location off-site to ensure it does not get infected should the malware spread within the network like it has this time. In addition, the data must be encrypted and access needs to be limited with least privilege. Also, we must ensure that all security patches for our applications are up to date and harden user applications to control those that have the ability to perform unwanted actions, such as running Flash without permission, especially those that may come with attachments. Since 95% of cybersecurity breaches are due to human error, as demonstrated by the current situation, it is imperative that all stakeholders are trained properly and routinely on the various vulnerabilities and attacks that exist. The training should include not only awareness, but also on reporting procedures, physical security, encryption methods, and the potential risks of interacting with other parties. Lastly, periodic penetration testing will occur more often to ensure that the security measures put in place are operating at the highest capacity, as well as identifying any new vulnerabilities that may have resurfaced and testing user vigilance. In order to ensure that there is backup data for continued operations, Team Australia recommends that backups of all sensitive and high priority data are always kept off the network and have limited accessibility. The data should be placed in a secure cloud-based service, and the cost will vary depending on who is providing the service. In addition, we need to implement the Agile model for the SDLC, as it is considered the most realistic and flexible. While there will be some costs involved in changing our processes, the savings down the road will far exceed that of the upfront cost, because the product produced will be more secure, functional, and the chances of it meeting the initial goals during the planning phase will be met. Another recommendation is to reevaluate the necessity for the number of parties involved in the supply chain. By engaging in a limited number of relationships, it is possible to create closer and more trustworthy partnerships that will likely result in lower costs to both parties. Our final recommendation is that we provide professional training to our team so that they can in turn train the rest of the users. Training can be dispersed via classrooms, webinars, reading material, and even virtual classrooms. The cost for the professional training will be dependent upon where the team will receive their training and the course material. That concludes my presentation. I hope I have provided some insight into our current operating status, and you will find my recommendations useful. Thank you.